Because no matter what though, Pinkie Pie, is the fact that you have to be so precise when you're trying to able to land on that star space before you're able to purchase those. Yeah, which is true, because even then though, that sometimes that it can be outright luck based at times if you like getting a certain amount of numbers, or you know, basically for pretty much everything you might as well able to encounter for. But that I digress. So even then though, we got ourselves the 10. And in addition with that, we got ourselves a 13 space movement. So, do we get possibilities that we might actually get ourselves a treasure chest for once? Well, let's just say, yes. In fact, this is what happens if you manage to land on that happening space. If only if you're able to get the actual treasure chest key, this will actually happen. So we got a special event, and then as soon as we automatically uses that, and sure enough, we get ourselves the glorious power star. Or in this case, for this matter, just the star itself. Yeah, which is a very good reward if you ask me, because even though, if you have been struggling just about to get that star to begin with, well, turns out it's a good thing for you that you can able to actually keep that for good. So even then though, that again, that it only happens at least once. So because of that though, if there is only like one key for its disposal, then, you know, you can't able to actually get that anymore because it's already been used. So, that's as far as we can able to think about for the time. So anyways though, another thing is worth mentioning though is the fact that, since after all that we almost nearly towards the end of, you know, in March for that particular month, before we move on to the next month, which is April, that, how the fact that the matter is though, is the fact that, well, let's just get into more discussions about the forms of some of these items that we no longer have anymore, which there are. Well, we've already mentioned about the forms of the Dreamcast collection on the Xbox 360 compilation game, all in one disc, because of, you know, we've already got ourselves Sonic Adventure DX on a digital download version now. And also we don't have anymore is of course the Charizard amiibo, because for the Super Smash Bros. Lineup. The reason being for that is because of how the fact that we're most likely concerned about the fact that we might get Pokemon Trainer amiibo at this point. But it all depends on that really, because most of the time though, that is especially noticeable in the early days when the amiibos are going to be approaching on its release, that sometimes though it can be easily be out of stock for that particular point, because I know for the fact that they are so desperate to able to get one of those amiibos exponentially. Even especially noticeable for the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate lineup set of amiibos. Sorry for the tongue twisting in the end though, Sonic. That's okay, Pinkie Pie, because sometimes though, yeah, you just have to like pronounce things properly. So there we go. So we got nutcases again. So even then though, that we seem to able to get quite a lot of those little nuts or acorns, because compared to like Team Bowser, they just have, you know, the lesser amount of those little nuts, or in this case, for this matter, acorns. So yeah, that seems pleasant enough. And now we're on turn number 10. Jeez, we're actually almost at the halfway point of this board already. And then by that time, until the next weekend, then how the fact of the matter is though, is the fact that we're about to be moving on to the next board in the Mario Party, or no, not in the Mario Party mode, but in the Partner Party, which appears to be Gold Rush Mine. So yeah, we'll find things out during the next weekend, and so whenever we mention about more on that, whenever we get to it. So yeah, another thing we don't have anymore, which I've already said this before, about the fact that originally when we did manage to able to do not have like 3 items, but it turns out we actually don't have 5 items with us this time around, because I thought to myself, well, turns out that we actually did manage to sell not only 1 but 3 DS games that we did manage to sell, which there are Mega Man ZX, and especially noticeable for Worms Open Warfare 1 and Warfare 2. Because the reason being for that is because, well, let's get started with the forms of Mega Man ZX first. Well, turns out I had a little bit of a struggling playing that game, because I know for the fact that how the matter is though, is the fact that it feels more likely a combination of both the classic Mega Man and especially with the Mega Man X games, but I couldn't even play it properly. And as a result though, however though, I'm pretty much going to be stuck with the forms of like the Mega Man, classic Mega Man games, and the forms of Mega Man X series for this point in time. So But even then, though, and plus as a result though, that getting Mega Man ZX and ZX Advert, those games are pretty expensive to get. But anyways though, we have a new minigame, Hammer and Sick'em. So smash your rifles balloons. Make sure they don't pop your own balloons. So basically you have to be able to pop your rifles balloons, and that's about it. So and I believe this is also a minigame that has been showcased back in E3 2018. Yeah, which is pretty cool if you ask me, but even then the minigame is over for about 3 seconds until, you know, your companion was able to do a lot of work for you. Yeah, because, you know, that this is actually like the 2 versus 2 game, so well, in this case a team minigame, but like, whatever you want to be more precise with. So, yeah, that's as far as I can say about Mega Man ZX, that we no longer have that game anymore, and even especially noticeable with Worms Open Warfare 1 and 2. So let's start with the first game. The reason being for that is because I don't normally play that game that much, compared to the forms of the sequel back in the day. Just because of how the fact that, well, we did manage to play it for a bit, but I don't think there's any single player content. Well, there is, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't have a story mode, unlike in the second game. But that's why we no longer have Worms Open Warfare 1, and especially noticeable for Worms Open Warfare 2. Just because of how the fact that Nintendo Warfight Connection, you know, back in June almost about 5 years ago at this point, that how the fact that Nintendo Warfight Connection is now discontinued since then. And also, as a matter of fact though, I cannot even like begin to imagine of how the fact that, wow, I can't even like proceed that much in terms of the story mode as far as progressions goes. And no matter what though, the reason why we did manage to sell ourselves Worms Open Warfare 2 is because, well, you know, the online features is now no longer present because of how the fact that they're going to be moving on to Nintendo Network, and especially noticeable with the Nintendo Switch online membership services or something like that. So, because again, new generations has fully become, so yeah, you get the idea for that solution, and about time since we got ourselves our second star. Yeah, after about a few amount of turns ahead, then we can finally seem to surely we can now able to actually get that star. Yep, which is true for that. And by the way, if you manage to able to land on the same space as your rifle was actually landed on, and you can actually able to steal even more coins by simply just able to ground pound them. Well, it only happens automatically. So, yeah, because you couldn't tell from the previous turn that how the fact that our companion Diddy Kong did manage to able to ground pound Bowser Jr.'s head. So, or in this case, for this matter, Bowser Jr. completely. Anyways, though, so the next star space is going to be right over there. But the thing is, though, is the fact that we need to rely on the fact that, again, we cannot even bypass through the Worm's back. So you have to be, like, approach it from the front until you're able to actually continue forward a little bit. So, yeah, that makes it clearly obvious here. So, okay, so tall order, I'm pretty sure we got this for the most part, though, with this minigame here. But even though this is the minigame we've already played, so, yeah, don't think there's not much to say around here. So yeah, let's see the actual, like, selling these game items out of the way. Let's just talk about the forms of the new pickups that we did picked up by the forms of some replacements items, which there are. Let's just say Warrior Master of Disguise, because we would like to give that game a second chance, and also we might actually considering about the fact that we haven't got a Warrior platformer game in years now, since about a decade ago, and we really want the new Warrior platformer game, damn it. Because, after all, we did enjoy every single Warrior Land series, including Warrior World especially, too. And, let's just say this right now, about the fact that let's just hope if the Nintendo Switch were able to get Warrior a platformer treatment at some point in the future. Or if, depending on the forms of Nintendo's E3 stuff until this year. But again, we'll never know until whenever that comes. So, but anyways, though, as far as Warrior Master of Disguise as far as I'm concerned, I still think this is actually one of the weakest Warrior platformer games I've ever played. Well, just because of how the fact that you have to deal with the complex controls. And, we did manage to got that game back in the day, for about, during the likes of I would say for about, 12 years ago at this point, or perhaps maybe 11. But either way though, that we have no longer have that at first, but now we're able to actually rebuy the game completely, but it doesn't come with the actual complete manual, and especially noticeable, there was actually a little bit of a mark on the case, because even then, no, that's as far as you know, used conditions of some of the stuff is concerned. That's just by usually conservatory with. So, and the second item that we did manage to replace with those 5 stuff we have to like sell though, and that is the forms of our final Nintendo Wii game we actually got. And that is of course Mortal Kombat Armageddon. Because we already got ourselves Mortal Kombat for the PlayStation Vita, and turns out that we did manage to spot it by the forms of Mortal Kombat Armageddon, and seems with the price of about like, let's just say £4, I thought it was a pretty nice deal, if only if I wish that there was a manual included, because again, used condition sometimes contains like either manuals or leaflets, whilst other times it doesn't, so yeah, sometimes you have to complain about the forms of some sellers these days throughout the forms of certain, like, shops or what have you, but even then, no, that's besides the point. And, as far as playing it on it, actually, we did manage to play this, ironically, on the forms of my, Super Nintendo controller for the Super Nintendo Classic Mini version. Yeah, which is, pretty cool if you ask me, because even then, though, the actual Super Nintendo controller, while I was playing Mortal Kombat Armageddon on our own time, it did work surprisingly well, although they are missing some features, which there are, you know, the home button if you take a break, or especially noticeable with, the ZL and ZR buttons, because we did manage to able to try to originally find the Wii Classic controller, but it was buried underneath the whole bounty of controllers at the moment, specifically for our drawers. But even then, though, that's as far as I'm concerned with this, so... Anyway, so we are playing Absent Mind, so even then, though, that, let's just see how we can get this thing going. Daisy is missing because we can definitely tell that, you know, she wasn't shown on that image. Yeah, especially with that little, fuzzy imagery, as you can see there. So, anyways, though, and we did pick up the Wii version of Mortal Kombat Armageddon because it features an exclusive playable character, which I think it was actually Chameleon. I think that's what the actual character itself is named, even though I really do apologize for the actual pronunciation errors though, but still. Yeah, and looks like we did conquer everything throughout. And I'm quite surprised about the fact that, well, you know, I forget what I just said. Even then, though, that despite the fact that we actually got ourselves 2 Mortal Kombat games so far, but even then, though, I don't know if we can able to get them all, though, because even then, excluding by the forms of Mortal Kombat 11, though, just because, well, it might be a little bit too violent for my liking, but regardless of such, I'm pretty sure Shadow the Hedgehog will able to consider playing that, so, to make it a little bit more darker and edgy as far as I'm concerned with. And the final item that we did got after replacing those particular items, and that will have to be SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom for the original Xbox. Now, originally I was able to actually like play this on my original Xbox, but just like in the past few years, since the used copy of Shadow the Hedgehog, and especially noticeable with Crash Twinsanity from the past, sadly it doesn't seem to able to play my original Xbox. Which, it only did happen on my Xbox 360, which did works just fine, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem to work on our original Xbox most of the time. Well, the good thing about this though, Pinkie Pie, is the fact that we're still able to get ourselves the PlayStation 2 version, so that way we can able to do a, you know, a full-on Let's Play of that game at some point in the future. But not particularly this year though, just because of how the fact that there are some more titles coming out for it, including the likes of some of them for the Nintendo Switch. So, speaking of such, that Nintendo Switch is gone surprisingly, because even then, recently, actually, for the forms of the entire weekend so far, that there was actually a Sega Festival that has been hosted during the likes of a couple of days ago, and surprisingly enough, it actually got ourselves not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4, you know, 4 games that has been announced what I was most likely familiar with. Because, after all, that next year, that Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games is going to be hosted on it during the likes of in Japan next year, it turns out that we actually got ourselves 4 Olympic Games, being published by Sega, has been announced. So let's, run down the list, shall we? So those are the official Tokyo 2020 video game, which is very likely concerned, and that game will be released on the forms of not only from the Nintendo Switch, but also by the forms of the PlayStation 4 as well. And next up on the list is the forms of first of all, we got ourselves our glorious new minigame. Draw the line. Recreates the pattern shown in the example. The first team to 3 points wins. So yeah, you have to basically copy the actual, like, the center of the screen as you can see for that example. But the only problem I have with this minigame though is the fact that the computer players can be act out pretty dumb at times, because even then, we did try to match up to the actual pattern right there, but the computer players refuses to let us do that method. Like, take this for example. We did manage to try to get to that method right there, but look at that. Computer players are acting like an idiot, whilst the forms of the other team did manage to do this just fine. So what's the point of our teammates just keep on screwing us over? But even then, it kind of reminds me of that particular minigame from, what was that minigame that usually just trying to actually, like, you know, trying to utilize the forms of screwed over teammates. I'm guessing as far as I'm concerned, oh crap, no, Diddy Kong, no, what are you doing? See, this is what I mean, because even then, he decides to walk off, and then he doesn't do Baku all. But I digress, we got it in the end. But I will say though, is that I really do like the aesthetics about this minigame though. It's all about, like, made out of wool and stuff. But anyways, let's do the high five here and get some more even coins. Well, for this matter, just only 10 coins. But ultimately though, I'm pretty sure that we might actually only get ourselves just 10 coins per team. So, yeah, I guess that makes it obvious. Even though that's, yeah. And, the second game they actually get announced with by the forms of the Tokyo 2020 Olympic video games as far as I'm concerned, which there are, you know, the most hyped one of the bunch actually, in my honest opinion, and that's will have to be the returning of the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games. To be more specifically, Mario and Sonic at the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. So yes, it's been about 3 years since after the release of Mario and Sonic at the Rio 2016 Olympic Games for the Nintendo 3DS and for the Nintendo Wii U. And because the reason why they skipped over by the forms of the Pyeongchang 2018 Winter Olympic Games, because I'm pretty sure they don't have the Sega license for the forms of the Olympic Games video game counterparts of the Mario and Sonic series, so even though instead of that, Ubisoft's in charge. Yeah, because it makes it clearly obvious at this state. But even then, I don't really mind about it too much, because even then, I kinda wish that was existence, but it wasn't, due to the forms of the actual licensing issues for Sega's knowledge, as far as I'm aware. Yeah, it could be true though, and it looks like the next Power Star is gonna be right at the very beginning of the board. Yeah, which is very funny actually, because even then, it's almost like going completely in front before you're able to start off the board. Yeah, which is true. But even then though, that I'm pretty sure we're going pretty near to that potentially though. And the good news about this though is the fact that oh wait, I think Bowser might actually go in another way from that escaping point. Yeah, which is probably true. So anyways though, yeah, it's been about 3 years since the last installment of the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games franchise since, you know, 2016 Rio. Because of that though, I'm really hoping they did manage to actually fix some of the issues we had with the the forms of the Rio 2016 Olympic Games, which we're really hoping for it. And in addition with those particular stuff is the fact that I'm pretty sure that Mario and Sonic at the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games, I believe is going to be exclusively to the forms of the Nintendo Switch. Yeah, which is pretty cool if you ask me, because I'm pretty sure enough though, it might actually function the same way for how it does it in most of those Nintendo Switch games, like specifically, for example, that, you know, we're still playing Super Mario Party because that game utilizes the Joy-Cons. I'm pretty sure enough the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games for Mario and Sonic were able to still utilize the Joy-Cons, which I'm really hoping for that actually, because even then, you know, it's just like in the old days back in Beijing 2008 and London 2012 Olympic Games, they did utilize the motion controls with the Wii remote. And don't forget the nunchuck in here and now as well. And especially notable with how the fact that with the Olympic Winter Games in Vancouver 2010 one, that also utilized the motion controls. And especially notable with the forms of, in Sochi 2014 as well. Although before we mention about this, however, though, just for kicks, a new minigame. Get the ball into the goal. No goalkeepers here, so fire away. This minigame is kind of like how we did in the forms of some of these football types of minigames. Like, I think the last time we actually got the football types of minigames like this, like ever since Mario Party 10, in the forms of like Soccer Brawl in America, whilst in the forms of our country's name of that minigame is called Football FIFA, just because, for the UK audiences, it calls it football, and as for the American standpoint, it just calls it soccer. Yeah, because it makes it sensible for things, I suppose. But I digress. I think, to me, this minigame is miles better than the forms of how it does in Football FIFA for Mario Party 10, in my opinion, just because, well, for one thing, it's the fact that you can now able to actually move your character whatever you want, without even utilizing the actual, like, motion controls to balance the ball and stuff. And second of all, that you have a lot more teammates than the forms of how it does in Mario Party 10, as opposed to in just 2. And, I suppose the third and final thing is the fact that I'm pretty sure enough, though, that after when you're able to get the exact same amount of points, you don't force to able to deal with the forms of a tiebreaker match. So, I'm guessing that is a much more improvement to me over the likes of how it does in Mario Party 10 counterpart, in my opinion. Yeah, which is true, because even then, although it's kind of a shame you can't able to switch between these different players, because I'm pretty sure I'm pretty much used to with the forms of Mario Strikers Charge Football type of game on the Nintendo Wii, because in that game, you can't able to switch between these different players whatever you wanted to in part of your team. Yeah, but not the case for this point here. So, yeah, that makes it a little bit more of a struggling moment here and there. But I do enjoy that minigame though still. So anyways though, let's get back into the forms of the information about the forms of the Mario and Sonic at the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games, shall we? Yeah, for the Nintendo Switch most likely, but not only for the Nintendo Switch, but there's also going to be the arcade version here and there as well, which it might actually features the same thing for how it does it on the Nintendo Switch version, but it might actually have a different amount of events, which even then, that can be summarized as such. And what's cool about the forms of the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games, which I think that game will about to be coming out for the Nintendo Switch on the forms of in winter this year, which even then kind of like the same thing for how it does it in Beijing 2008 for the Nintendo Wii, and especially noticeable with London 2012 Olympic Games for the Nintendo Wii as well. And I'm pretty sure the forms of in Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games during in 2013 at time. And except in Rio 2016 Olympic Games though, because in that particular installment, their master came out on the exact year of the forms of 2016, both on the 3DS and for the Nintendo Wii U basically. In fact, no matter what though, it's the fact that I'm pretty sure enough that the 3DS version doesn't seem to able to get that much credit for. By the way, this what happens if you see right there, that when Bowser Jr. managed to land on that specific bad luck space, there's actually a pretty cool reference right there. It's the fact that Kamek actually said, "I'm so sorry, Master," about the fact the manner is down. I'm pretty sure it does the same thing for Bowser as well, although I may be wrong. But even then, though, that if every time when Bowser or Bowser Jr. lands on that particular extra bad luck space, or the bad luck space in general, what happens is though is the fact that it does have a little nice reference of the forms of, let's just say in Yoshi's Island for example, that how the fact that Kamek was so sorry about the forms of Bowser or Bowser Jr. were able to actually cause them to lose themselves. Well, to be more specifically, if some bad things can happen for them. Yeah, which is pretty nice little reference right there for the forms of in Yoshi's Island after all. Yeah, which is pretty cool. So anyways though, yeah, not only because of how the fact that Mario and Sonic at the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games will be releasing at some point at the end of the year, in this case in the forms of in winter 2019, which it could be potential possibilities of the forms of our Christmas list for this year. Although we might be wrong, but even then we'll find things out during at some point in this year's E3, but even then we'll find things out by then. But also the fact of the matter is though, is the fact that much like in Mario Tennis Aces, that some of these playable characters, most notably with Mario and Sonic characters this time around, actually has outfits. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting, actually, because even though that, just like in forms of how it does it in, in Mario Tennis Aces, that's, well, only specifically for, Mario, Luigi, Wario, and Waluigi did manage to have themselves some different outfits and what have you. So it's pretty nice to able to see that most of the Mario and Sonic characters are able to now finally able to get themselves their different outfits this time around, which is very cool. Yeah, like for instance, you can now able to wear the shirt for your first time, Sonic. Yeah, which I felt was a little bit odd at first, but either way though, that's besides the point. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, is the fact that not only because that game will about to be coming out for the Nintendo Switch, but also for the arcade machines here and there as well. Just like the ones and how it does it in Rio 2016 Olympic Games. But I'm pretty sure enough though is the fact that the differences between the Switch version than the likes of the arcade version is that I'm pretty sure it has a different release date. So even then though, expected the arcade version will be released at some point next year. Yeah, just because of, they're trying to mash things up by the forms of the official events from the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. In fact, when that game is gonna come around for the Nintendo Switch, we might actually gonna do a Let's Play of that game around the same time as the, once again, hosting for the Olympic Games. Yeah, which is to be expected at this point, even then that we might do that, so... Of course, we got ourselves the Rumble Balloon mini event right there. So let's see how many coins do we have to wager. 30? Jeez, that's disgusting. But anyways, though. And, I suppose the fourth and the final game they did manage to able to announce for the forms of, the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games video games department, and that will have to be my version of my own version of Sonic at the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games, which I think is going to be coming out on at some point from the mobile devices, which is the Android versions and the iOS version, which even then, might be very curious to able to try that game out, but I don't know when it's going to be able to be released on, but I'm pretty sure it might be somewhat between, let's just say next year or this year. I think to be more precisely on that, Pinkie Pie, it might be in some point in 2020, I'm not exactly sure. But it's pretty interesting to see how the fact that we got ourselves the forms of, in fact it's been a really long time, according to the forms of back in the day, that back in 2008, and I believe in 2010 as well, that they did manage to able to announce Sonic at the Olympic Games back in the day. But I believe that application has now been removed for any other mobile devices around here. And same applies by the forms of in Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games back then. But I'm pretty sure enough though that app has also been removed, which I have no idea why, because it's hard to explain. Because even then, I haven't really watched those particular, the footage like this. Because even then, we're most likely interested with the forms of just Mario and Sonic at the Olympic series. Yeah, which is true, because even then, just to see of how the fact that there are some things have been, like, added to the mix, or some kind. So, yeah, as far as at the moment right now, about the fact the matter is, though, is that in some sports, mainly by the forms of the Mario and Sonic at the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games at this point, well, they did actually always brings back to the forms of some of these events, like most notably with the forms of, the 100-meter dash, and triple jump, and the javelin throw, but we also now have it finally make its return by the forms of the badminton event. Yeah, because unlike in Rio 2016 Olympic Games, where it does have it on the 3DS version, but we have no idea why they took it out on the forms of the Wii U version for some stupid reason. Anyways, pull it together, a new minigame type, so even then pull your rifles over the line, mash the button as fast as you can. And basically you have to like mash that right button on that Joy-Con, then you would able to win. Which I'm very glad that's actually a better choice than the forms of how it does it in the Tug of War minigame from Mario Party 1 / Mario Party the Top 100. Because the problem I have with the forms of the Top 100 specifically for the Tug of War is the fact that since you have to utilize the circle pad to rotate it until you're able to pull up the rope, but I'm very glad that's been improved in this game this time around because you have to simply just mash the button and that's all you have to do here. Yeah, which I'm very glad that's been a thing. So, anyways though, let's do a high five shenanigans again. And yeah, everything's all accounted for. So anyways though, we got ourselves a badminton event ever since in London 2012 Olympic Games, which I'm very glad for. But even then though, let's just hope if that controls are able to actually just, well, don't screw me up for that point again. Well, we have to wait until that game comes out at some point, but even then though, we'll see what happens there. So, but currently it's been development at the moment, so they need to take some time before the actual game comes out. And before you're able to mention about something else though, is the fact that there's actually the new sport that is actually being introduced in the forms of Tokyo 2020 actually, and that will have to be skateboarding. Well, it could be somewhat of an inspiration of the forms of the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater series or something, like performing tricks and everything like that. Well, it could be a possibility still, Pinkie Pie, but again, let's not get ahead of ourselves for that just yet. And possibly they might actually reveal some more events in the future, and you son of a... they stole the allies for us. I guess no matter what though, it's the fact that, well, the bonus stars might be still a thing, but I'm pretty sure enough is that Team Bowser might actually get the buddy bonus. Yeah, which is probably true for the doubt. But either way, let's go ahead and just get, use Pom Pom's dice block instead. So anyways though, let's see what we got here. 3 plus 6 makes 9, and plus 1, so that makes up to 10 for us. So, let's just hope if we can able to land on that star, if all depending on the forms of these landing precision stuff. Which, if I'm guessing this correctly, it might not be, but, what do you think? Let's go over that then. And sure enough, we can able to ground pound Bowser Jr., well, even though that all of his coins will be all gone by then. And because we actually did deserve that, or in this case, that we deserve them due to the forms of how the fact that he did actually steal our allies. Yeah, but it's also another way you can able to actually steal allies from is of course the ally glove. So, yeah, you know, kinda like how he did in Mario Party Star Rush though, okay? Like I said this before already, so... Well, looks like we keep on getting lucky spaces for this point for today, even by the forms of the actual board itself, and we can actually receive a golden dash mushroom. So that's pretty cool though, and for some stupid reason is that our teammates decided to get rid of the normal regular dash mushroom. So, and by the way, if you manage to land on the same space as each other for your teammates and yourself, you can also able to get some of these coins or what have you. So that's pretty cool, but it only happens if you manage to let your teammates land on the same space as you were. So yeah, just keep that in mind. So play hard again.